Hey guys, tonight we slip into something a little more uncomfortable. A sleepy little town where the sun rises soft and golden, brushing over rooftops like it has every morning. You're in Villisca, Iowa, in 1912. Your socks are wool, the floorboards groan, and there's that fresh-baked smell drifting in through the kitchen window. But something's off. The town is quiet, even for Villisca. Too quiet. No kids shouting, no buggy wheels clattering. Just a weird stillness stretching across the morning like wet laundry on a sagging line. You stretch, yawn, maybe toss on your housecoat. The calendar reads June 10th. And across the street, the Moore house sits heavy in the sunlight. Curtains drawn tight, chimney cold. That's strange. Josiah Moore is usually up early, running his hardware store or tidying up the porch. His wife, Sarah, is known for her punctual breakfasts. Bacon, eggs, that slightly burned toast she insists is just the way Josiah likes it. And the kids? Always noisy. Yet today, nothing. You rub your arms, chilled despite the summer warmth. Still, it's probably nothing. People oversleep. Kids get sick. Maybe they all went out early? But there's no note on the door. No buggy tracks in the dirt. Just that eerie, static quiet. The kind of silence that feels scripted. Like someone hit pause on a record player mid-song. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments. Where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step outside, squinting against the light. Across the street, Mary Peckham is already hanging laundry. She gives a polite nod. Nothing new, except today, she looks unsettled, folding the same towel 3 times. You wave. She doesn't wave back. A couple of boys pedal past on bicycles, but even their laughter feels forced, like they know they're supposed to be carefree but can't quite get there. It's like everyone in town is holding their breath. Historical fact time. Back in 1912, Villisca was a prospering railroad town about 2,000 people strong. It had electricity, a decent school system, and enough gossip to keep a barber's chair warm all week. But that morning, that was the end of Villisca as it had been. You wander a little. The humidity sticks to your neck, and the roads are already baking under the sun. At the post office, someone mutters about the Moore house. You perk up, lean closer, just vague grumbling about how no one's seen them. Still, it's enough to raise your pulse. Then something flickers in your peripheral. A memory? A shadow? No, just a flutter of curtain from the Moore's second-floor bedroom. Or was it? You stare a little too long. It doesn't move again. Your mind's playing tricks already, and it's not even noon. The odd thing is, the chickens are still. Not a cluck, not a scratch. Even the dog that barks at clouds isn't barking. One of those strange nature moments when it feels like the whole world knows something before you do. You turn back toward home, but your eyes keep drifting to the Moore house. The screen door is still closed. No signs of life. A single fly bounces against the window pane. Then again. Then again. Fringe tidbit here. Some locals believed that morning was cursed. Not just unlucky, but cosmically warped. They said the sun rose 2 minutes early, that the breeze smelled like sulfur, that horses wouldn't walk past the Moore house even the day before. And that's when you remember the church social the night before. Sarah Moore helped organize it, remember? There was lemonade, sandwiches, a youth recital. They were all there, even the Stillinger girls, staying over for the night. 8 people, 1 house. And today, not a sound. Historians still argue whether the timeline of the murders places them during the early hours of June 10th or just before midnight on the 9th. But in this moment, you're still blissfully unaware of any of that. You're just noticing things feel Wrong. At some point, you see Mary again. She's stopped hanging laundry, just staring at the Moore home. You catch her eye and she walks over. "Have you seen Sarah today?" she asks. You shake your head. She frowns. "Strangest thing. Not a peep from that house. I knocked earlier, but..." She trails off, looks back toward it. "I might go check again." You watch her cross the street, apron flapping slightly in the breeze. She walks slowly, then disappears around the porch. The screen door squeaks. A pause. Then the unmistakable creak of wooden hinges. You wait and wait. 30 seconds pass. A minute. No sound. You shift your weight. Every instinct tells you not to go over, but your curiosity itches. You finally take a step off your porch when Mary comes back out. She's pale, holding her arms like it's suddenly winter. I didn't go in." I called. Knocked. Nothing. Her voice cracks. "I think someone needs to call the marshal." You don't know it yet, but that moment, that quiet exchange by the picket fence, that's the exact point your sleepy little world snaps into something darker, something permanent. You look at the house again. Still just a house, but now it feels like it's watching you back. Mary Peckham doesn't go back to her laundry. She just sort of hovers on the sidewalk, wringing her hands, apron spotted with flour. You stand next to her, both of you staring at the Moore house like it might blink first. The porch is still. There's no movement behind the curtains. Even the fly that was battering the glass earlier has vanished. You offer to walk with her to find someone, a town official, a husband, anybody with a spare set of nerves. She nods a little too quickly, as if being alone with her thoughts is worse than whatever might be inside that house. You don't walk fast. Neither of you want to. It's just after 8 a.m., and Villisca is only just beginning to stir. There's the smell of coffee from a few open windows, the click of a horse's shoes in the distance. You pass a boy sweeping the steps of the drugstore. He doesn't look up. You find Ross Moore, Josiah's brother, near the hardware store. He's dressed in overalls, his shirt sleeves rolled up, dirt under his nails. He raises a brow when you approach, that early morning good humor slipping as soon as Mary opens her mouth. "They're not answering," she says too fast. "None of them. I knocked. The doors were locked. I even let the chickens out. Something's not right." Ross frowns, wipes his hands on a rag. "Probably just overslept. Kids wore them out last night." "Ross," Mary says, lowering her voice. "Even the breakfast dishes weren't touched. It's like nobody went downstairs." That stops him cold. Without another word, he grabs his keys. You follow him and Mary back down the street, heart starting to hammer just a little louder now. There's a weight behind your ribs, that creeping sense you get right before you open a closet in a scary movie. And remember, no one knows anything yet. All of this is still just bad vibes. When you get back to the Moore house, Ross heads for the back door. He calls out once, twice. Then he frowns, tries the knob. It's locked. A brief historical aside. Most Iowan homes in 1912 didn't bother locking their doors. It just wasn't considered necessary. But the Moores had locked theirs front and back. Ross disappears around the side of the house. Moments later, you hear the rattle of the back screen and the soft metallic clink of his key finding the lock. The door creaks open. Then silence. You're holding your breath. Mary's eyes go wide. You're just about to say something when you hear Ross's voice from inside. "Oh, dear God." And then nothing. You want to run. Your body is already turning. But your feet stay, anchored, because, without knowing that something has just permanently broken. Ross staggers out a moment later, ghost white. His lips move, but nothing comes out at first. Finally, "Call the marshal." You don't see what he saw, Not yet, but the look on his face is enough. He's a man who's worked with saws and lumber his whole life. A man who once set his own dislocated shoulder with a belt and a fence post. And now he can't even stand up straight. Someone sends for Marshal Henry Hank Horton, a wiry man with a mustache that looks like it's holding most of his expressions hostage. He arrives on foot, tipped off by a neighbor who dashed off the moment Ross emerged. Fringe tidbit: Marshal Horton, though brave and competent in many ways, reportedly refused to go into the house alone. Whether it was fear or superstition or just common sense is still debated. Historians still argue whether it was Horton or Ross who officially discovered the crime scene. But what's certain is this: by 9 a.m., the marshal had been inside, then come back out. Face pale, hand shaking, refusing to say anything in front of the small group gathered on the lawn. You inch forward, caught in the gravity of the moment. Horton says something to one of the teenage boys loitering nearby. A few minutes later, the local doctor arrives. Then the coroner. And then, of course, someone goes to fetch the priest. Now people are starting to gather. You're no longer alone with Mary. There's Mr. Gibbs, the grocer, standing with a paper bag of potatoes forgotten in his arms. Mrs. Barnes, the midwife, clutches her shawl like it's the only thing keeping her together. You overhear someone say, "They're all dead," and then it spreads like a match hitting a dry field. All of them, even the children, the Stillinger girls too? How? How could someone? No one says the word yet, not out loud, but it hangs there. You're shaking now. You don't even notice it. Your fingers are curled into fists. You think about the smiles from last night's church program, the songs, the kids in their Sunday best. And now this. Word moves fast in a town like Villisca. By 10 a.m., there's a crowd outside the Moore home, and someone's brought lemonade. Because grief in small towns sometimes wears the mask of hospitality. They whisper, pass fans back and forth, try to keep their voices low, but they're all looking at the house like it's an open wound. Fringe detail: there were actually people who entered the crime scene just to see. Curiosity overruled decency. At one point, someone even took a piece of Josiah's skull as a souvenir. Sleep tight with that thought. You stay on the porch, watching the sunlight grow hotter, harsher. The wood under your shoes feels like it's vibrating, and every creak of a shutter makes your skin crawl. The last thing you see before you finally go home to lie down and try not to think about it is a kid, barely 10, standing dead still, staring up at the house like it's whispering to him. You wonder if he's hearing something you aren't. The crowd thickens. By noon, you've got neighbors leaning on fence posts, hat brims casting shadows over wide, stunned eyes. Kids, against every parental order ever issued, are trying to sneak peeks through the bushes. The Moore house is no longer a home. It's a spectacle. You're standing there, trying to decide whether to stay or go, when someone murmurs, "They didn't even lock the door last night." You stiffen. Because earlier Ross couldn't get in, it was locked. That little detail cracks the surface. It's not just the murders anymore. Now it's how they happened. You hear the sheriff tell someone they found the front door unlocked when they arrived. But the back? Secured tight. Like someone came in one way, left another. Or never left at all. You can't stop picturing it. 8 people gone.
No screams.
No struggle anyone could hear. How is that even possible? You feel that chill again, this time not from fear, but from trying to make the math work. You step back, trying to fade into the background, but your ears are working overtime. I heard the chimney was stuffed with cloth, someone says, to muffle the sound. Maybe he was in the attic, waiting. The thought sticks. Someone waiting, upstairs watching. While the family laughed and prayed and played with their guests, he was up there, listening, Fringe tidbit. Some believe the killer, or killers, had been inside the house for hours before the murders. A slab of bacon was later found near the crime scene, wrapped in a cloth, untouched. Nobody knows why. A message? A ritual? Or just hunger? Marshall Horton eventually ropes off the front porch with a bit of twine. More symbolic than useful. It might as well be a velvet rope outside a grim theater. People lean in, peek through windows, whisper guesses like it's a game. You hear everything from vengeful spirits to escaped lunatics. One woman swears she saw a man in black walking away just before dawn. The curtain flutters again. You feel like it's looking back at you. And then someone opens the front door. A man you don't recognize steps out. Sharp suit, straw hat, leather notebook. A detective, probably, but he doesn't announce himself. Just lights a cigarette, scribbles something down, and walks straight past you. The house exhales stale breath behind him. You catch a whiff of something foul. It's not the heat, though it's sweltering now. It's not just death, either. It's decay of a different kind. Like the soul of the house is rotting. You notice the quiet again. Not just stillness, but a vacuum. No birdsong. No wind. Even the gossipers lower their voices now. It's like the house is listening. And then you hear it. A sound you can't place at first. Low, slow, rhythmic. Hud, hud, hud. Your imagination goes into overdrive. Is it footsteps? A heartbeat? No. Someone hammering something? Where? You spin, heart in your throat, only to see it's just a man knocking loose a fence post across the street, fixing his property. Because apparently life just goes on. You turn back toward the house. A child near you mutters, "He's still in there." You glance at him, eyebrows raised. "The bad man," he says, matter of fact. "I think he's hiding in the walls." Cute. Except your spine has just flash frozen. Historical fact. By the end of the day, authorities found all the victims bludgeoned in their beds. Josiah and Sarah Moore, their 4 children, and the 2 visiting Stillinger girls, all struck with the blunt end of an axe. The ceilings bore marks from the follow-through. The killer, whoever he was, had swung with brutal force and stayed long enough to cover every mirror in the house with cloth. Historians still argue whether this was a ritualistic move or a simple act of remorse. Maybe he didn't want to see his own reflection. Or maybe he didn't want the victims to see him. Either way, chilling. And here's where things get worse. The axe? It was still there, leaning against the wall, as if the killer didn't care if it was found, or wanted it to be. You find yourself drifting toward the porch. Just one step, then another. No one stops you. The twine flutters. A single boot print stains the step. You wonder whose it is. Your hand grazes the railing. It's warm, sun-baked, but underneath you swear it vibrates, like it's holding a charge. You pull back just in case. Someone behind you whispers, "The clocks were all stopped." You freeze. That's true. Authorities noted that every clock in the house had wound down. Not unusual, maybe, but eerie. Like time itself had given up the moment the murders happened. And that's the thing, isn't it? You're not just grappling with what happened. You're trying to figure out how the universe allowed it. In Villisca, in your neighborhood, in beds not so different from your own, you finally turn to leave. You've had enough. But the Moore house? It lingers. You feel it watching your back. And when you glance over your shoulder, you half expect to see someone peering through the curtains. You don't. But that doesn't help much. By the time you reach your own porch, the skies turn thick and gray. A storm's rolling in. Somewhere, thunder grumbles. Your screen door creaks behind you, and for a moment you swear you hear breathing. Close. Human. You spin. Just the wind. Still, you close the door fast. You lock it. then double lock it. You barely sleep that night. Not because of what you saw, because of what you didn't. The mind fills in blanks better than any monster could. Every creak in the walls sounds like footsteps. Every gust of wind becomes breath on the nape of your neck. You don't even bother going upstairs. You curl up on the couch, blanket pulled to your chin like that'll stop an axe. By morning, your house smells like coffee, dust, and worry. You open the curtains and see the same quiet street, but now it feels charged. The Moore house is still sealed off, but people are already gathering again, like moths to something rotten. You shuffle out onto the porch and squint at the figures milling about. The news has traveled, not just across town, across county lines. Horse-drawn wagons, Model Ts, even a few bicycles rest along the road. They've come to stare. And oh, do they stare. Some with curiosity. Some with something darker, twitchier, more theatrical. There's a woman with a parasol and binoculars. For heaven's sake. You half expect someone to start selling popcorn. You join the crowd cautiously, shoulder to shoulder with neighbors who now speak in whispers, glancing over their backs like the murderers hiding under every bonnet. This isn't grief, it's alarm. The kind that worms into your bones and makes you question every smile you've ever shared. A man leans over to you. "Did you hear about the bacon?" He asks like it's a punchline. You nod, trying to look unsurprised. "It was wrapped, you know," he continues. "Tidy, like a gift." You offer a weak chuckle. "Yeah, real thoughtful murderer." He laughs. Too loud. Theories are flying now, bouncing from face to face like a deadly game of telephone. One woman insists it was a hired killer. Another whispers about Satanists. Someone mutters, jealousy. And suddenly Josiah's business rival is at the center of a full-blown shouting match. Historical fact, the main suspect early on wasn't Reverend Kelly or some drifter. It was Frank Jones, a former state senator and Josiah Moore's business adversary. Josiah had left Jones's company years earlier and taken a major John Deere contract with him, which, in small-town Iowa terms, was basically economic treason. Jones denied any involvement, but that didn't stop the town from side-eyeing his every move for years. Historians still argue whether his influence shielded him from deeper investigation, or if there was simply never enough proof. But to the people on the porch that morning, proof didn't matter. Gossip was the law now. You lean against a fence post. The wood is warm, splintered. Someone's left a copy of the Des Moines Register sitting in the grass nearby. You glance down and catch the headline, "Entire family slain in night, axe murderer still at large." So now it's official. National news. And just like that, Villisca becomes a ghost town with a press badge. Reporters are arriving in droves. They walk like they own the place. Slick hats, glinting cameras, questions sharpened like knives. You spot a journalist interviewing a teenaged boy who maybe saw something, or maybe just wants to be important. You overhear. "He had a limp. No, a suitcase. Definitely foreign. Spoke with a lisp. Or a southern drawl." Fringe tidbit. One reporter printed that the killer was a left-handed circus worker who used a lantern with the chimney removed, suggesting premeditation and familiarity with rural homes. Another claimed to have photographic proof of supernatural activity in the attic. Spoiler, it was dust. You drift toward the Moore's fence line again, watching more strangers take up space in your town. A man is sketching the house, his pencil scraping fast and frantic. Beside him, a woman fans herself, muttering prayers. Behind you, someone asks if it's true the axe was still bloody. You keep your back turned. This isn't your town anymore. Not really. It's a backdrop now, painted with fear and speculation. You look around at the faces, people you've known forever, and they all wear new expressions. Suspicion, calculation, survival. Then you spot someone you weren't expecting, your postman, Mr. Leary. He's always been the friendly sort, whistling while delivering mail, chatting about the weather. Today he's hunched, eyes darting, lips tight. You ask him how he's holding up. He gives you a flat look. "Fine," he says, then adds, almost defensively, "I was in Omaha that night. You didn't ask." But now you're wondering why he felt the need to say it. That's the shift right there. The town isn't looking outward for answers anymore. It's turning inward. Eyes scanning neighbors. Whispers behind curtains. You catch yourself thinking things like, well, Mrs. Bennett always was a bit odd. Or Mr. Dake used to be a butcher. Knows his way around a blade. And then it hits you. If the killer wasn't some out-of-town drifter, then he's still here. Sitting in church. Drinking coffee. Reading the same headlines you are. Historians still argue whether the killer stayed to watch the aftermath unfold. Some believe he boarded a train before sunrise. Others think he melted into the town like a drop of ink in water. But the most chilling theory? He never left. You step back from the crowd, suddenly nauseous. The scent of warm grass and perfume makes your stomach turn. Everyone smells too human, too normal. And that's the problem. Normal people don't bludgeon children to death in their sleep. But then again, normal people also don't cover mirrors, light lanterns just so, and disappear without a trace. You head home, feet dragging through dust. Your screen door slaps shut with a sound that echoes too loudly. The silence inside your house feels accusatory now. Your own reflection in the mirror makes you flinch. You sit down at the table and start a list. People who might have done it. You cross off the first 3 names, then add 2 more. You don't like the person you're becoming, but you like the idea of not knowing even less. You don't go near the Moore house today, not even close. You avoid that entire block, crossing the street like it's infected. But you still hear the buzz because Villisca can't stop talking, and the hum of speculation is louder now than the summer cicadas. You keep your head down, but your ears stay wide open. By mid-morning, Sheriff Hank Horton has returned, his face drawn like he hasn't slept. He doesn't make eye contact with anyone, not because he's hiding something, but because he's seen too much. You watch him from a distance as he walks back out the Moore's front door, stopping on the porch with a kind of dazed stillness, like he forgot why he came outside. When someone asks him what happened in there, he doesn't answer directly. He just says, "All of them. Still in bed," then turns and leaves. Still in bed. All of them, as if they'd simply decided not to wake up. The crowd's gotten worse, less local now. Word has spread like syrup on a hot griddle, sticky and slow and impossible to contain. Strangers are rolling into town wearing city suits and polished shoes, like they're stepping into some grim museum. Some carry cameras. Some carry notepads. A few carry Bibles. The porch becomes a stage. Horton the unwilling actor. And all around him, the audience watches with rapt horror, trading fresh theories like marbles. One man claims he's a psychic. Another says he's here from Chicago to track the killer personally. The confidence is nauseating. Historical fact. As the story went national, dozens of amateur detectives, opportunists, and self-proclaimed clairvoyants swarmed Villisca. Some even walked through the crime scene, contaminating it before proper forensic work could be completed. Evidence? Good luck with that. You lean against the hitching post outside the general store, trying to disappear. Then you see Ross Moore again, Josiah's brother. He's standing at the edge of the street, staring back at the house like it's dared him to blink first. You recognize the look. It's not grief, it's guilt. Survivor's guilt. Why him and not Josiah? Why any of them? He's approached by 2 men in neatly tailored suits. Not cops. Not neighbors. Something else. Private investigators. That's when you realize, Even law enforcement doesn't trust itself anymore. Fringe tidbit. At one point, the Pinkerton Detective Agency, yes, that Pinkerton, was contacted regarding the murders. No formal record proves they ever took the case, but several men claiming Pinkerton ties did nose around town. Most left as clueless as they came. You keep your distance as Ross walks with the strangers. They disappear down the alley behind the church, talking in hushed voices. You'd follow if your stomach weren't already tying itself into knots. Instead, you find yourself drifting back toward the porch where the crowd loiters, maybe out of morbid pull, maybe just because it's the only thing anyone talks about anymore. You hear someone say they saw a footprint in blood. Another swears they heard crying in the attic last night. No one knows who they're quoting anymore. Just a loop of lore growing with each telling. One man claims he saw the murderer. Tall, beard, carried a sack. What kind of sack? Someone asks. He frowns. Murder, why? You'd laugh if you hadn't started scanning every man on the street for sacks. Or beards. The sheriff tries to calm things down. Holds a brief statement on the steps. We're investigating every angle, he says. We'll bring someone to justice. You want to believe him. But then someone yells, like you brought justice for the Olsen theft? And the crowd erupts in uncomfortable chuckles. The mood is turning. This isn't concern anymore. It's unrest, suspicion, distrust in authority, in neighbors, in God even. Historians still argue whether local law enforcement ever had a real suspect at all. The case file ballooned with names, but the investigation was notoriously disorganized. Evidence was handled casually, sometimes passed from hand to hand like a potluck dish. And you can feel it in the air now. Nobody really believes there will be justice. Only stories, theories, and fear. That afternoon, someone from town organizes a prayer circle. You don't go. Not out of rebellion. You're just too tired, too mentally crumpled. But you hear the hymns float down your street like ghost music. They sing Abide With Me. You close your eyes and try not to picture the children's beds. And yet, you do. That's the worst part, isn't it? You didn't even know the more kids that well, but now their names feel carved into your bones. You wonder what they were dreaming when it happened. If they dreamed at all. You hope it was quick. You pray it was silent. You make tea you don't drink. You scrub your floors twice. You check your locks 4 times. And then, sometime around sunset, you notice something strange. Footprints in the dust. Near your back gate. Not fresh exactly, but not yours either. You crouch to inspect them. Barefoot. 3 prints angled oddly. Then gone. You tell yourself they've been there for days. Just hadn't noticed. Right? You go inside. You draw the curtains. You light a single candle. You sit and you listen. To your own breath. To the groan of old wood. To the way the world sounds when everyone is afraid to sleep. You go to your bedroom. You try to forget the word axe. You fail. Then you double-check your back door. Just to be safe. You find yourself wishing quietly that someone would just confess. Just stand up in the middle of town and say, "It was me. I did it." Because the not knowing, that's the real killer. You wake up before the sun. Not because you meant to, but because your dreams keep dragging you under and tossing you out like laundry in a summer storm. In one, you're walking through the Moore house, but it's your house too. The wallpaper peels. The axe lies at the foot of your bed. And someone whispers your name in a voice that sounds like your own. You make coffee you don't want. Toast you won't eat. And when the light finally breaks across the cornfields, you're already standing at the window, eyes drawn, again to the Moore house. The curtains are still drawn. Of course they are. You swear the air itself smells different now, like copper and burnt oil. By mid-morning, you're out on your porch again. Because what else is there to do? The hardware store's shuttered. Church is postponed indefinitely, and the Moore house has become Villisca's black hole, pulling every conversation, glance, and heartbeat into itself. And here come the rumors. Oh, they're growing teeth now. You overhear two farmers at the well discussing the bloodstains. Said they found boot prints leading back out. No, barefoot. Left foot only. You think it was ritualistic? Reckon it was someone local. Gypsies. Or Catholics. You blink. There it is. The turning point. Because when people are scared, logic dries up and scapegoats start sounding mighty convenient. Historical fact. At the time, gypsy was a catch-all slur tossed at migrant workers, Romani travelers, or really anyone deemed not from around here. By the end of the week, several transient families were harassed, run out of town, or worse, and all without a shred of evidence. You walk into town and find the front porch of the general store packed, not with shoppers, with conspiracy theorists. Someone's made a chalk sketch of the house layout on the sidewalk. A woman in a green hat is pointing to the children's room, explaining her theory. He started here, went clockwise, like some kind of ritual circle. Another man jumps in. No, he was a doctor. Only someone trained could be that precise. Or a preacher. Or a butcher. Or a woman. Heads turn. That suggestion, quiet but sharp, floats above the group like a wasp. They chew on it, spit it out, move on. But you file it away, because now you're considering everyone. And then, of course, someone brings up the stranger. You remember seeing him, too, don't you? A twitchy man in a dark suit. Maybe not. Memory's funny like that. But plenty of people think they saw him. Arrived on the evening train. Carried a suitcase. Stayed out of sight. Left early. You're not alone in noticing the stranger-shaped hole in everyone's stories. Fringe tidbit. There was, in fact, a traveling preacher named Reverend George Kelly who passed through Villisca around the time of the murders. He attended the children's recital the night before. He was peculiar, nervous, some say disturbed. And yes, he left on the early train the next morning. But right now, to the people of Villisca, he's just a name. A whisper, the rumor of a suspect. You find yourself gravitating toward the train depot, just to look. The benches are empty, save for one old man chewing tobacco and watching the tracks like they're going to confess something. You sit beside him, not close, just near enough to feel human. You see the preacher? You ask. He spits, nods once. He say anything? You try. The man shrugs, said he liked children's voices, that they sounded pure. He scratches his head. Something felt off, like he didn't mean it in a good way. You don't know what to do with that. You walk back slowly. The train tracks run parallel to your thoughts now. Quiet, humming, full of direction and mystery. Someone could have slipped away easily, boarded before anyone even found the bodies. But that theory's too neat, isn't it? Historians still argue whether the killer left town that night or stayed to watch his work unravel. Some even believe he returned years later. Others say he never left at all, that he just started going by a different name, sitting in the back pews, handing out hymnals with blood still under his fingernails. You turn onto your street and feel a shift. Your neighbors, friendly, familiar faces just a week ago, now avoid your gaze. They nod without smiling, speak in clipped syllables. Some won't even look up. And it dawns on you, they think it might be you. You? A killer? The absurdity almost makes you laugh. Almost. But then you remember you have your own list, scribbled down in a drawer. Neighbors, friends, possibilities. And you wonder whose list you're on. Someone knocks on your door that evening. You jump, pulse hammering. It's Mr. Henry from 2 doors down. He smiles too hard, says he's checking in. But the way his eyes scan your foyer says something else. He's checking out. You invite him in. Offer tea. He declines. But he lingers just long enough to notice your boots by the door. Your newspaper on the table. Your hands maybe shaking just a little. He leaves with a tight nod. And now you're the subject of porch whispers. You feel it. You spend the night glancing through your curtains and wondering, what if it was someone you know? Someone you borrowed sugar from? Sat beside in the pews? Someone whose face you trust so completely that it never even made your list? You start another list. And this time you include your own name, just in case. The morning sun doesn't warm you the way it used to. It just lights up everything you're trying not to look at. Cracks in the sidewalk. The dead leaves curling near your fence. That one crooked shutter on the Moore house, still unmoving. Like the whole place is holding its breath. You walk to town because staying in feels worse. Your walls creak too much. Your floorboards echo like they're carrying someone else's footsteps. And let's face it, you're not sleeping anyway. Today, the square is crawling with men in shirt sleeves and suspenders, most of them doing their best detective impressions. They puff pipes, stroke chins, peer dramatically at the ground like answers might be lying in the dirt. One of them has a magnifying glass. You're not sure if that's for show or if he genuinely thinks it'll help. Blood patterns. Someone mutters, "Weren't none on the windows." Another replies, with the smug tone of a man who's never cleaned glass in his life. You blend into the crowd, half curious, half disgusted. It's become a sport now, a scavenger hunt. You hear a woman say she's charging 10 cents to lead people around the Moore house yard. No one stops her. Historical fact. The crime scene became so contaminated within days that investigators were left with little more than speculation. Locals tramped through the house, touched evidence, even chipped parts of the walls as souvenirs. By modern standards, it was a forensic disaster. You watch as two boys poke around the perimeter with sticks, like they expect the murderer to be hiding under a rock. Another group of teenagers is sketching something on a notepad. One claims it's the killer's signature pattern. One of the self-styled sleuths holds up a piece of broken wood and proclaims, "Handle from the murder weapon." It's clearly just part of a crate, but no one argues. And that's the problem. Every theory sounds plausible now. The killer could be a butcher, a stranger, a ghost, a priest, a 10-year-old genius. Every theory sounds less plausible the longer you sit with it, which only makes the guessing worse. You follow a pair of men around to the back of the Moore house. They're trying to jimmy open a cellar window. One of them says, "I bet he hid in there." You watch as they duck inside, without permission, without shame. They emerge minutes later, covered in dust, looking both disappointed and smug. "Just storage," one says. "But he could have been down there." The phrase of the week, "he could have." Everyone's using it. Everyone thinks they've cracked it. But no one's explaining why the town still feels like it's under siege. Fringe tidbit. One of the most bizarre amateur theories at the time was that the killer was invisible. Not metaphorically invisible. A phantom. A few townsfolk, clearly well-read in dime novels and spiritualism, insisted it was the work of a supernatural entity who vanished before sunrise. Some even held seances. You catch your reflection in a store window and realize you look different now. Older, harder, like the mystery's taken root behind your eyes. You step into the barber shop just to breathe something normal. It smells of shaving cream and talcum powder. The radio's off. The men inside are quiet, which is strange. Usually this place is buzzing. "Morning," you say. They nod, but the smiles are forced. A man in the corner chair speaks up. "They say the killer might have had training." "Like military?" the barber asks. "No, surgical." You realize they're talking about the precision, the order, the stillness of the bodies, the fact that nothing in the house looked ransacked. You know who's trained like that? Someone mutters. Everyone leans in. Morticians. The barber sets down his razor a little too fast. You leave before it gets weirder, because everything is weird now. The air, the people, the way your own hands tremble when you turn the doorknob to your house. You don't even make it all the way home before hearing the new rumor. It's not a theory this time, it's a name. Reverend Kelly. You freeze. You remember him. Slight man, nervous eyes, kept touching his collar like it was strangling him. He sat near the back during the children's recital, sang louder than anyone else, then left early the next morning. He's gone now, someone says. Where? Train. Left before they found the bodies. And there it is, the perfect suspect. Out of town. Odd behavior. Religious overtones. Creepy energy. It's like everyone agrees instantly. He's the guy. But something about that bothers you. It's too convenient. Like they've just been waiting for a name to shove into the hole where fear lives. Historians still argue whether George Kelly was ever a serious suspect or just a convenient target. He was later arrested, yes, but his confession was inconsistent, and some believe it was coerced. Others argue he simply enjoyed the attention, suffering from mental illness and desperate for importance. But here and now, in Villisca, he's guilty in the court of public opinion. You ask someone what proof there is. They just say, he gave a sermon that week about sin being punished in sleep. As if that explains everything. You keep walking and your mind starts spiraling. If it was the Reverend, why the moors? Why that house? Why that night? And if it wasn't, then who else could move through a small house, in the dark, murdering 8 people with an axe, and never wake a soul? You think back to the Moor's attic. Was someone hiding there, watching the family, breathing their air? Fringe theories start swirling again. Maybe there were 2 killers. No, had to be a woman. I heard he locked the doors behind him. I heard he didn't lock them at all. You want answers, so you write them. In your notebook, you start with facts. 8 victims. No forced entry. Mirror coverings. Uneaten food. All killed with the blunt side of the axe. Beds undisturbed. Then you add the bizarre. Slab of bacon on the floor. Lantern chimney removed. Locked doors in a town that never locked anything. You stare at the list and realize it doesn't help. It only deepens the hole. Because for every detail that points in one direction, another turns it around. You close the notebook. Go home. And that night, for the first time, you check your attic. Just in case. You don't sleep much after that attic check. Not that you expected to find anything, but that creaky third step? You're never going to hear it the same way again. Morning light barely peeks through when you're already up and dressing. You sip your bitter coffee and watch the world through your window like it's a theater set waiting for its first actor. And right on cue, there he is. Reverend George Kelly. Back in Villisca. You blink. Double check. But yes. Same short stature. Same jerky walk. Same suitcase dangling from one long arm like it's full of secrets. You step outside and pretend to sweep your porch. Subtle. You think. He walks past you and nods. Polite. Quiet. Same awkward energy as before. And if your hands didn't suddenly go cold on the broom handle, you'd think it was almost nothing. But it isn't nothing. Because he came back. You watch him turn the corner. His long coat flapping like it's trying to escape. He doesn't stop at the general store. Doesn't chat with anyone. Just disappears into the same boarding house he stayed at last time. You consider following. Then decide against it. Instead, you make your way toward Town Square. The gossip machine is already churning. He's back. someone says, voice low but buzzing. You lean in just enough to catch the thread. Claims he was called back for prayer services. What kind of minister shows up after a murder? Maybe he came back to gloat, or to confess, or to kill again. The fear is thicker now. No longer jittery whispers. It's sharpened, suspicious, barbed with tension. People are locking doors before dusk. Shopkeepers are sleeping behind their counters. And now, here's the Reverend, mysterious, twitchy, and poorly timed. Fringe tidbit. George Kelly had a long history of erratic behavior. He was once arrested for sending obscene letters. He frequently traveled across the Midwest, preaching revival sermons with a style that was less inspiring and more frenzied. Some described his delivery as frenzied or even possessed. You wander by the church, half expecting it to be boarded up. But it's open. Of course it is. Because even when they're afraid, folks in Villisca cling to their rituals. You slip inside. Wooden pews, stale air, that faint scent of hymnals and old wax. And there he is, Reverend Kelly, standing near the altar with his hands clasped too tight, like he's squeezing the pulpit into submission. He's talking to Mrs. Weatherby, the choir director. You can't hear the words, but you see her nod, then step away quickly, her mouth a tight line. You sit in the back pew, pretend to pray, but you're watching. He doesn't look like a killer. But then again, what does that even mean anymore? A voice next to you whispers. He was at the recital. Did you know? You glance sideways. It's Mr. Lewis, the school janitor. Nervous type, always smells like paint thinner. He sat alone, he continues. Didn't clap. Just stared at the children. You don't respond, because now you remember it too. Vaguely. A man sitting in the last pew, face like a stone carving. Historians still argue whether Kelly's attendance at the recital was coincidence or stalking. Some say he was simply a traveling minister filling his calendar. Others believe he targeted the Moors, specifically the children, after seeing them perform. You leave the church before he starts preaching. You've had enough sermons lately. On your walk back through town, you hear more whispers. He confessed, you know? What? Yeah. Told the police he was in the house. He said that. Maybe. Or maybe someone just said he did. And that's the Villisca way, isn't it? A rumor within a rumor. Truth and lies braided so tightly no one wants to pull them apart. You stop by the train depot again. You're starting to treat it like a confessional. The man behind the counter gives you a weary nod. Don't suppose you know when the Reverend's planning to leave? He snorts. Don't suppose anyone's told him. You look down at the travel log. Reverend Kelly signed in. Room 2 at the boarding house. Expected to stay 3 nights. He wrote his name in perfect cursive. Neat, practiced, maybe rehearsed. You ask around that afternoon. Quietly, casually. Anyone remember where the Reverend was that night? Anyone see him? The answers are vague. He left the recital early. Boarding house said he was in by 10. No one saw him after. You file it all away, building a mental map you know won't lead anywhere. But you can't stop drawing the lines. That night, there's a community meeting at the schoolhouse. The chalkboards still have spelling words written across them. Candle, wagon, family. You sit on a splintered bench while half the town crams into the room. Someone's trying to lead with prayer, but the murmur of questions drowns it out. Sheriff Horton stands in front. He looks exhausted, wrung out, and then, surprisingly, Reverend Kelly steps up beside him. The room hushes. I know my presence troubles some of you, he begins, understatement of the year. But I believe God has placed me here to pray for Villisca, to offer peace, to help us heal. No one speaks. A cough, a shifting boot. He continues, voice shaking now. We are all grieving, all fearful, but we must not turn on one another. And that's when someone shouts from the back, Where were you that night? The Reverend stiffens. I was asleep, he says, at the boarding house. Can anyone prove that? Silence. Then he adds, I had a vision, that morning, before I knew what had happened. Oh no, wrong answer. A low murmur spreads through the room like a wave of doubt. Even the sheriff looks uncomfortable. You sit frozen as Kelly clears his throat, says something about prayer, then steps down. Someone hisses, Only the killer sees things before they happen. You walk home in a fog. And when you finally lock your door for the night, you do it slowly, carefully. You test the bolt, then the windows, then the back door. Again, because now the preacher has returned. And for all his talk of healing, you swear the town feels sicker than ever. You're not sure when the change fully takes hold, but it's here now. The town has folded in on itself, like a quilt in winter, tugged tight against the cold air of doubt. Villisca isn't just grieving anymore. It's closing ranks. People move differently. Doors open slower. Eyes linger longer. Friendly waves are replaced with barely their nods. You see Mrs. Callahan, who used to chat your ear off about peach preserves, glance up at you through her blinds before turning away like she hadn't. You get it. You're doing it too. You catch yourself locking the pantry, like maybe you're trying to protect your canned beans from someone who bludgeoned a whole family. Or maybe it's not about the beans at all. Maybe it's about the feeling that nothing is secure anymore. The whole town is double-checking everything now. Not just locks, stories, alibis, friendships. A person can't walk from the general store to the bank without someone asking, Where were you last Sunday night? In the most casual, terrifying way possible. Historical fact. Fear after the Villisca murders became so potent that many families began sleeping with weapons under their beds. Rifles, axes, even baseball bats. Hardware stores sold out of locks within days. Some townsfolk even nailed their windows shut. You see it on your own street. New bolts on old doors. Men taking turns on porch watch shifts. Cradling lanterns and low conversation. Could have been anyone, one mutters. Could be anyone still, another replies. You don't contribute. You just sit there and listen, wrapped in a blanket even though it's 80 degrees. Later that day, you pass the Moore house again. You don't mean to, but your legs seem to know the route by now. Like muscle memory forged from horror. The house is still. No police tape anymore, just emptiness. The grass has started to yellow, untouched. The garden's gone to seed. A window upstairs is cracked open. You didn't notice that before. You stare at it too long. Long enough to imagine someone staring back. You move on. But even your walk feels different. Like the town is watching you through 100 lace curtains. You see shadows move behind them. Feel the weight of unasked questions. And it's not just suspicion anymore. It's isolation. You see it in the way Mrs. Lindley now avoids the town bakery because her cousin came in from Des Moines too soon after the murders. Or how Mr. Howard stopped letting his kids play outside because someone said a man with a limp smiled at them from a wagon. You hear people whisper about Reverend Kelly constantly, but no one confronts him. He's still in town, still preaching, still walking around like he hasn't noticed the atmosphere has soured to vinegar. One afternoon you spot him on the far side of the square, speaking to a stray dog. Not petting, just talking, like he's explaining something. You cross the street, and then there's Sarah Turner. Sweet, lonely Sarah Turner. Lived alone at the edge of town ever since her mother passed. You used to see her baking pies through her kitchen window. You hear someone accuse her of knowing more than she says. Too quiet, they whisper. She said she saw the Reverend. said she heard things. Maybe she heard too much. It's not what they say, it's how they say it. Like they're trying to decide if they should be afraid of her, or just get rid of her. Fringe tidbit. Several residents were quietly pressured to leave town in the months following the murders. No formal accusations, just doors that stopped opening. Businesses that forgot to fill orders. A slow freeze-out. Sarah Turner would eventually vanish from town records completely. No explanation. That's the kind of fear that lives in Villisca now. The self-sustaining kind. You don't even need a reason to be suspicious anymore. You just need someone to be a little off. A little outside the circle. You're not even sure you're in the circle anymore. You get a knock at the door one evening. Just one. You open it slowly. Mr. Gibbs, from down the road, stands there with two other men. No smiles. No friendly preamble. "We're doing a check-in," he says. "Just want to know if you've seen anything." You swallow. "No," you say. "Just the same things you have." He nods. But he's not really listening. His eyes move past you, into your hallway, your kitchen, your life. You stand there as they leave, heart pounding. You bolt the door, then rebolt it, then move a chair in front of it for good measure. Historians still argue whether small-town fear helped or hindered the investigation. Some say it made people vigilant. Others say it corrupted everything, created 100 false suspects, and scared the real killer into deeper shadows. You sit by the window again that night, hands resting on the windowsill, eyes scanning the empty road. You try not to look at the Moore house, but you can't help it. It's not just a crime scene anymore. It's a mirror. Everything you didn't want to believe could happen did. And the reflection it's casting back at you is not just about the killer. It's about you, and what kind of person you become when fear has nowhere to go. You catch your own reflection in the glass, drawn, shadowed, not entirely familiar. You blink, and for a second, you swear your reflection is still staring when you turn away. But you don't double-check. You just go to bed, and dream of locked doors that won't stay closed. You've never seen a newspaper wagon move so fast. It rolls into town just after dawn, bouncing along the dirt road like it knows it's carrying dynamite. And in a way, it is. You're at your window, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee, watching as bundles of freshly inked scandal spill into Villisca like someone just yanked open a floodgate. By 8 a.m., half the town is holding papers. By 8:15, the other half is demanding to borrow them. And by 8:30, every porch, feed store, and hair parlor is vibrating with one word: murder. Big, bold, cruel across the top of the front page. Axe fiend slaughters family. Town in panic. You knew the papers were writing about it, sure. But this is a performance. The murder isn't a tragedy anymore. It's a headline. It's sensational. It's branded. And it hits you. Villisca just became famous for the worst thing that's ever happened to it. You grab a paper and trace your finger down the lines. Half the article is wrong. The family names misspelled. The town described as dusty and superstitious. There's a quote from someone who definitely doesn't exist. They describe the crime scene with morbid poetry and way too much confidence. The worst part? They love it. Historical fact. The media circus around the Villisca murders was one of the first of its kind. Newspapers as far as New York and San Francisco splashed gruesome descriptions across their pages, often embellished for drama. It wasn't about justice, it was about sales. You hear laughter behind the general store. Not joyful laughter, nervous laughter. The kind people use when they're trying not to fall apart. A group of teenage boys are reenacting the murder using sticks and bedsheets. You look away. You hear someone say the word Axeman like it's a comic book character. Like they're trying to give the killer a nickname so they don't have to say killer. You hate how easy it is to say Axeman, You hate how often people are saying it. A woman at the post office is reading the paper out loud to a small circle of neighbors. Her voice drops theatrically for the gory parts. One man nods like he's at a sermon. You know that look, that flicker behind their eyes. It's not shock anymore. It's ownership. People want to be close to the horror. They want to say they were there, that they knew something, that they saw the look on his face. It's not about truth. It's about proximity. Fringe tidbit. Some townsfolk reportedly claimed psychic visions of the crime after reading the newspaper descriptions. One woman insisted she'd smelled the blood in her dreams. Another claimed the ghost of one of the Moore children appeared to her in a sugar beet field. You walk past the cafe and hear a customer ask the waitress if she's related to the Moores. She isn't, but she says, "Third cousin, maybe?" Then adds, "I used to babysit the Stillinger girls." You doubt that, but who's going to question her? Truth is soft now, easy to shape. And you've stopped talking altogether, because every time you open your mouth to say, "That's not how it happened," someone else opens theirs to say, "Are you sure? Were you there?" So instead, you listen. You hear someone say the killer came from Kansas. No, wait, he went to Kansas. No, he was from Kansas and returned to Kansas. You hear someone say the axe was left in a pail of water. Another says it was placed lovingly next to the bed. You even hear someone swear the killer sang hymns as he worked. You want to scream. Historians still argue whether the media attention helped or hurt the investigation. On one hand, it pressured authorities to act. On the other, it muddied the waters with so many false leads, grandstanding experts, and misreported facts that clarity became impossible. You sit on your porch and watch the sun crawl across the sky like it's reluctant to shine on Villisca today. You look at the paper again. Read the article a second time. This time slower. You circle things with a pencil. Blow after blow. No known motive. Face of each victim covered. Mirror shrouded. Slab of bacon. The bacon again. You still don't understand that part. No one does. And that, weirdly, is the only part the papers don't exaggerate. They just mention it and move on, like it's less strange than the murder itself. You fold the paper and set it on your lap. It's warm from the sun. You stare out across the street, where two little girls are jumping rope and chanting a new rhyme. 1 for the preacher, 2 for the door, 3 for the axeman. Who's coming for more? You look away. You go inside. You close your windows. You hide the newspaper in a drawer under a stack of laundry you don't plan on folding. Then you sit in the silence. Not even because you want quiet, but because everything outside is too loud with lies. And because, deep down, you're afraid of the day when someone walks up and asks you for a quote. You'd give them one word, stop, but they wouldn't print that. They'd want something juicier. That night you try to sleep, but your body says no. You lie there in the dark, under thin blankets, windows shut tight even though the air is thick as soup. Your ceiling fan squeaks with every rotation, like it's trying to confess something. You stare up at it for hours, listening to every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind, every imaginary footstep on your stairs. And then, as if your brain decides you haven't suffered enough, it gifts you a thought. What if the killer is watching right now? You sit bolt upright, just for a second. Then tell yourself you're being ridiculous. There's no one there, but you don't turn your back to the window again. You finally drift off sometime near dawn. And that's when the dream comes. You're standing in the hallway of the Moore house. It's quiet. Too quiet. The air is heavy, syrup thick. You walk past the bedrooms, first the children's, then the guest room, and finally Josiah and Sarah's. The door creaks open on its own. Inside, everything is still. Then you see it. An axe, glinting in the corner, resting against a mirror draped in cloth. You step forward and hear a whisper behind you. He never left. You wake up sweating. You stumble to the kitchen and splash water on your face. The sun's barely risen, and already, your pulse is racing like you ran here from another town. You don't tell anyone about the dream, but you start to notice something new. Other people are. It's the latest twist in the Villisca mystery. Dreams. People claim to have seen things in their sleep. Shadows, children, blood, a man holding an axe made of light. One woman says her dream told her the killer's name. Another says her baby cried all night and said, "Clear as day." He's here. You don't even have children, and that gives you chills. Fringe tidbit. For weeks after the murders, townsfolk reported visitations in their dreams. Some called them warnings. Others said they were messages from the victims. A few even claimed to see the murders as they happened. None of the visions matched. You try not to buy into it, but you find yourself comparing notes. You pass a neighbor on your morning walk. Mrs. Dowell, early 50s, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep, and she asks, "Have you been dreaming too?" You nod. Not quite yes, but not no. "I keep seeing the house," she says, "but the doors are all open, and I keep hearing someone say, 'I'm not done.'" You quicken your pace. Later that day, you find yourself at the train depot again. It's become a strange ritual, like checking in with the only neutral ground left in town. You watch the platform. You watch the people. You look for strangers. You look for familiar faces acting strange. And then someone taps your shoulder. It's Reverend Kelly. You flinch. It's instinct. He's holding his hat in both hands, like a schoolboy sent to the principal's office. I hope I haven't made you uncomfortable," he stammers. You don't know what to say. He fills the silence. "I've had dreams too," he says, eyes darting. You swallow. "What kind of dreams?" He smiles, but not with his eyes. "The Lord shows me things." You almost ask what things, but you already know you don't want the answer. He tips his head, as if expecting you to invite him to continue. You don't. He clears his throat. "They say I was there, that I did those terrible things." You hold your breath. "I wasn't," he adds. "I couldn't have been." He looks like he believes it, or maybe he just needs to believe it. You nod once, say nothing, and walk away. Your legs move fast. Your heart moves faster. Historians still argue whether Kelly's confession was genuine or the product of a disturbed mind. In some accounts, he claimed God had commanded the killings. In others, he recanted immediately. The truth remains elusive. That night, the town is restless. Lights stay on longer. Porch chairs are empty. Dogs bark more than usual. You hear someone hammering a new lock onto their front door at midnight. And you stay up reading that newspaper again. The one with the wild headline. You highlight parts with a stub of a pencil. Not because they're true, because they've started to feel true. You write something in your notebook. The killer didn't disappear. He dissolved. You're not sure what that means yet, but you believe it. You close the notebook and glance at the window. Still shut. Still locked. But for a moment, your breath fogs the glass. And you see something in the reflection. A shape. A shadow. You spin around. Nothing there. You're losing it. Or maybe Villisca is losing everyone. You decide to sleep on the couch again. You lie there listening to the house. And when you dream, it's not of axes. It's of silence. The kind you hear just before something truly awful happens. You don't even blink when the second murder hits the headlines. It's a dusty Tuesday when someone runs into the bakery, waving a newspaper like a torch. "Colorado Springs," they shout. "Same thing, same thing." You set down your cinnamon roll. Suddenly it tastes like ash. The town reacts like a prairie dog colony under a hawk. Everyone freezes, then starts darting in every direction at once. You hear the details in pieces, like broken glass clinking across the sidewalk. Family of 6. In their beds. No witnesses. Axe left at the scene. Mirrors covered again. You lean over someone's shoulder to read the article. The language is almost identical to what you read about Villisca, like someone just copied the template and switched the names. Historical fact. On September 17, 1912, just 3 months after the Villisca murders, the Burnham family was killed in Colorado Springs. Bludgeoned in their sleep. Curtains drawn. Covered mirrors. No robbery. The scene so eerily similar, officials immediately suspected a connection. And now you're no longer alone in your fear. Villisca thought this was its curse. But maybe it's a route. Maybe the killer is traveling, trying out different towns, testing how long he can go without getting caught. You walk faster that day, not because you're late for anything, but because standing still feels like an invitation. People start drawing maps, in chalk on fences in the dirt, plotting where it happened, where it might happen next. The axe line snakes westward. One man says he read about a similar case in Kansas City. Another insists the killer will head back east, to cover his tracks. You ask, what if he comes back? They all go quiet, because no one wants to say it, but everyone thinks it. Villisca might have been his beginning. His dress rehearsal, his practice run. You can feel it in the way the town starts behaving again, like a dog that thought the threat had passed, only to hear the growl behind it once more. Locks get upgraded. Again. Children are kept home from school. Again. Men take shifts walking the neighborhood, carrying rifles with guilt-worn barrels. Again. And the dreams return. Fringe tidbit. After the Colorado Springs killings, several Villisca residents claimed they'd felt something wrong days before the news broke. A pressure in the chest. A chill in the house. A crow landing on a windowsill and refusing to fly away. You don't know about crows, but you do notice the silence. It's louder than ever. Even the insects are holding their breath. You visit the train depot again. It's your habit now. You watch the incoming trains, scanning the faces. You don't even know what you're looking for anymore. A suitcase, maybe. A limp. Someone avoiding eye contact, or worse, making too much of it. You find yourself checking every man's hands. Looking for calluses. The kind someone would get from swinging an axe. It's ridiculous, but it feels like something you should be doing. And then there's the Reverend. Still in town. Still preaching. Still somehow walking free. He doesn't speak of the murders in his sermons anymore. Too much backlash after that last one. Now it's all vague forgiveness and healing and the Lord's mysterious plan. But you see the way people avoid sitting near him. How no one walks behind him anymore. How someone once let a door slam in his face, hard. You're not even sure if he believes he's innocent anymore. You pass him outside the bakery. He nods. You don't nod back. You walk faster. You go home. And that night you get a letter. You don't know who it's from. The envelope is plain. The handwriting is tight and careful, like someone trying very hard to appear calm. Inside, a single line. It will happen again. No signature. No address. Just that. You don't show it to anyone. You're not sure why. You just place it in your notebook, next to the others. Your scribbles. Your list. Your drawings of the Moore house floor plan. The little map you started tracing when you heard about Colorado Springs. You lie awake that night trying to decide what it means. A warning? A confession? A joke? And then you think, what if it's true? Historians still argue whether the Villisca killer committed other murders. Some believe the Axeman was a serial killer who traveled by rail, striking in a string of similar unsolved cases. Others believe it was a one-time horror, a tragic fluke by a deeply broken man. But the similarities are undeniable and unsettling. You doze off with the letter still clutched in your hand. You dream of a train, not riding it, watching it, as it slows to a stop, as someone steps off. Small suitcase, soft hat, walking like he knows the town already. He walks toward the house. Not your house, but a house that's starting to look more and more like yours. You wake up gasping, and for the first time since this all started, you start sleeping with a hammer under your pillow. You'd think the trial would bring some relief. It doesn't. It only makes the shadows deeper. Word spreads fast. Reverend George Kelly has been arrested. People practically sprint to the courthouse. You're not the only one who skips breakfast to get a good spot on the front steps. It feels like a festival day, except no one's smiling. Not really. Just that tight-lipped, bone-deep hope that maybe someone is finally going to pay. But as soon as Kelly walks in, escorted by two grim-faced deputies, the hope starts to unravel. Because he doesn't look like a killer. He looks like a man who hasn't slept in years. Pale, twitchy, fingers trembling like bird wings. His eyes dart around the room like they're searching for exits or angels. You lean closer to someone in the crowd. Is he guilty? They shrug. Doesn't matter. He confessed. Historical fact. George Kelly did, indeed, confess to the Villisca murders. Multiple times. And then recanted. Multiple times. His statements contradicted themselves, contained information not publicly released, then included details proven false. Some believe he was coerced. Others believe he enjoyed the spectacle. You watch the trial unfold like a bad dream in slow motion. The prosecution lays out the details. Kelly was in town that night. He attended the children's recital. He left on the early morning train. He wrote letters to authorities about the murders before some facts were public. He confessed twice. Sounds pretty open and shut, doesn't it? Until the defense takes its turn. They argue he's mentally ill, paranoid, obsessed with religion, sex, and sin. They say he read about the case in the papers, absorbed the details, and spun them into delusion. They say he didn't kill the Moore family. He just believes he might have. You sit there, arms crossed, trying to figure out how that even works. A woman behind you whispers, "He's possessed." Someone else says, "He's the devil in disguise." Fringe tidbit. During the trial, Kelly's defense team introduced the possibility of psychic confession. That Kelly had dreamt of the killings so vividly, he believed them to be memories. This was not an accepted legal argument. But it wasn't fully dismissed either. The courtroom feels colder than it should. Maybe it's the stone walls. Maybe it's the creeping realization that justice isn't simple. You start looking around, watching faces instead of testimony. You see people who knew the Moores, faces stiff with tension, eyes searching the floor. You see reporters scribbling dramatic headlines before the sentences even end. You see Mrs. Whitaker, the midwife, knitting in the back like her hands need something to do besides shake. You see the sheriff, hollow-eyed, sweating, like he's sitting on a ticking clock with no instructions. And then you see Kelly, and something about the way he folds his hands, the way he looks toward the ceiling with that faint, crooked smile, it gets under your skin. They bring up his earlier offenses, the letters, the bizarre sermons, the uninvited entry into a young woman's home in another state, the way he talked about children, too much, too intensely, like their innocence was something he wanted to own. You don't want to believe he's guilty, but you don't want to believe he's innocent either, because if he didn't do it, then the killer is still out there, watching, and that might be worse. Historians still argue whether Kelly's conviction or lack thereof was the result of reasonable doubt or a failure of the system. His trial ended in a hung jury. A second trial acquitted him. After that, the case quietly died in court. No one else was ever formally charged. You're there when the first jury announces it can't reach a verdict. A collective groan ripples through the courtroom, followed by a few stifled sobs. Someone near you curses under their breath. You don't react. You just stare at Kelly, who wipes his brow and mouths something to himself. You don't catch the words. You don't want to. When the second trial ends, quietly, anticlimactically, with an acquittal, you're there too. Not because you think it matters anymore, but because you have to see the ending, even if it's not satisfying. After the judge dismisses the court, Kelly stands and straightens his jacket. No smile, just a deep breath. Then he walks out. No one claps. No one cheers. Everyone just watches. You stay seated. Someone behind you says, "Well, that's it. We'll never know." And that's the real verdict, isn't it? We'll never know. You walk home slowly that day. Every building looks tired. The Moore house stands like a sealed vault. Faded curtains, cracked shingles, a history that refuses to stay buried. You pass by it. You always do. This time you stop, just for a second. You glance up at the attic window, and maybe it's the light. Maybe it's your eyes. Maybe it's just your imagination, but you could swear the curtain shifts just slightly. You don't go any closer. You just whisper to yourself, "We'll never know." Then you go home, lock the door, and start sleeping with the lights on. Again. Years pass. You don't notice it at first. One day you blink and it's been 5 years. A new coat of paint on the bank. A new teacher at the school. One of the grocers buys a second horse. And the Moore house? It just sits there, unmoving, unchanged, unclaimed, like time isn't interested in it anymore. You find yourself walking past it less, not because you forget, but because you remember too well. It's not just a house. It's a scar, a warning, a shape your eyes avoid even when you're staring straight at it. People stop talking about the murders, but not because they've stopped thinking about them. It's just easier now to pretend it was a different town, a different Villisca, like the version you're in now is some parallel place where that night never happened. Until one day, for reasons you can't explain, you go inside. Not alone. Never alone. It's part of a church historical tour. New minister. Young. Optimistic. From out of town, obviously. He says he's here to bring light to dark places. You nearly laugh at that one. There are 6 of you. The old sheriff's nephew. A schoolteacher. A woman who says she's writing a book. And you. The house looks smaller now. Like it shrank under the weight of its story. The wallpaper peels in places. The staircase creaks like it remembers every step taken in panic. The attic air is stale and strangely warm. You step through the threshold and instantly regret it, because it smells the same. Old dust, dry wood, and something else you can't name but remember. You move slowly, room by room, kitchen, parlor. You see the children's room. The beds are neatly made, but your mind unmakes them. You see the still shapes, the soft hair, the curtains drawn so tight the air could barely breathe. You grip the doorframe until your knuckles go pale. The woman with the notebook scribbles like she's found her next bestseller. She says, "I feel a heaviness here." You say nothing, because you feel it too. Fringe tidbit. Over the decades, the Moore house became a subject of intense interest, not just for historians, but for paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and true crime tourists. People claimed to feel pressure on their chests, cold spots, even whispers from empty rooms. Whether it's grief, memory, or something else, no one walks out the same. The minister offers a short prayer, something soft and general, for healing, For peace, for clarity. You close your eyes, and you see a lantern, lit, this glass chimney missing, placed just so on the floor. You don't tell anyone. The tour ends in the attic. Low ceiling, narrow space, a mattress pushed into one corner, part of some grim recreation. Someone says, "They think he hid here, right?" You nod. Or maybe you just think you do, because your mind's already there, in the dark, waiting, listening, breathing the same air as a family who had no idea death was sitting just above them like a shadow pinned to the rafters. Historians still argue whether the attic was used by the killer. Some evidence pointed that way, indentations on the floorboards, scuffed boot marks, but nothing definitive. Just more echoes in a house that stopped giving answers long ago. You lean against the wall and listen, and for a moment you hear it. Not a voice, not a creak, a kind of hum, low, constant, like a whisper being held just under the floor of your hearing. You close your eyes, count to 3. It doesn't go away. You're the last to leave. When you step out into the daylight, the others are already halfway down the path. The minister smiles. Feels better, doesn't it? You lie. Yeah. That night, back at home, you sit in the quiet and think about how some places remember. They hold on to things. Pain. Secrets. Unfinished business. They don't need ghosts. The memories are strong enough. You look out your window toward the corner of town where the house sits, out of sight, but never out of mind. And that's when it happens again. The hum. You check your ears. Nothing. It's not in your house. It's in your head. You lie down, hands folded across your chest like you're preparing for your own funeral. You close your eyes and breathe deep. In. But when you fall asleep, it isn't into dreams. It's into that house, that attic, that hum. It always finds a way back in. The final time you walk through Villisca, it's morning again. Not a dramatic one. No red sky, no crows, no distant thunder. Just a soft, humid summer morning. The kind that makes the grass glisten and the air smell like warm bread and pine needles. You walk slowly. You're not in a hurry. This isn't about getting anywhere. It's about remembering. The house is still there. Of course it is. It always is. The paint's been touched up. There's a discreet little sign near the gate now, historic site. Some visitors take photos. Some whisper. A few look disappointed that it isn't more haunted looking. You don't go inside this time. You've already done that. Once is enough. Instead, you circle the block. Shoes crunching on gravel. A low breeze moves through the trees like it knows something you don't. You pass the place where the neighbor Mary Peckham used to hang her laundry. The sidewalk where Ross Moore stood after unlocking that back door. The fence where a newspaper boy once dropped his bundle and ran. You nod to no one in particular, and you feel it, that familiar stillness. Not silence, not emptiness. Stillness, like the air is waiting. You pause across the street from the house and just look. It looks back, and somehow you understand it now. The house didn't kill anyone. It just held it. It absorbed every scream that never made it past a pillow. Every footstep that crept up the stairs. Every swing of that axe. Every breath, every heartbeat, every prayer. And then it locked them inside. It's a container now. Not for justice, for memory. You reach into your coat pocket and pull out something small. A folded page from your notebook. Just one sentence, scribbled in pencil. We still don't know. You press it through the slats of the picket fence and walk away. You don't look back, because Villisca's story doesn't end in a headline, or a courtroom, or a confession. It ends right here, in this quiet, half-lit morning with you, still wondering, still listening, still carrying a piece of it whether you want to or not. Because mystery doesn't close itself like a book. It follows you, just like the hum. Now, as the house fades behind you and your steps soften along the empty road, you feel the weight start to lift, gently, like a coat you've worn for too long, finally being shrugged off. You breathe in the morning air, cool, sweet, touched with something green and distant. It settles deep in your chest, slow and steady. No alarms, no whispers, just air. The town isn't healed. Maybe it never will be. But right now, under this soft sky, with birds beginning to stir and the world waking up one cautious note at a time, you feel a shift. Not peace exactly, but something like it. The mystery still lingers, probably always will, floating like dust in a shaft of light, catching your eye just when you thought you'd forgotten. But for now, it's okay to let go, to let the questions rest a little while, to ease your shoulders, close your eyes, and drift into a quieter part of the night. Let the hum become background noise again. Let the memory fade like candlelight against the dawn. You're safe now. You're home. And the house is just wood and walls again. Let the rest of it go. Let the stillness be enough. Sleep easy.